I don't know if you can see them. I'm about 50 yards from them. 2 deer right there.
3.
And there's actually more than that, but
There's 3.
we're walking up real slow here. See how close we can get. I don't want to disturb them really. Looks like they've got a little really young one right there. And then a doe right there. And there's another one just off to the left outside the camera here, but we'll see if we can get a little closer. Right there's the other one. See? They're not tame, but they know this isn't really a dangerous time for them. We're about 25 yards from them now. They'll probably head out here pretty quick. Come here, babies. Come here. It's okay. It's okay. And they're not going to let us get any closer now. Baby's standing right there. Time to go. There they are. It's okay.
Looking straight at me.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Alright, we're going to back off here so that they can go. There you go. There's the buck. These are little white-tailed deer. And that one got outside the fence, so it's going to help the others to go too. I hope you liked seeing the deer. You know, that's one of the nice things about coming out into the wilds, into the woods, into the faraway places, as we get to see nature. Something enjoyable to do. Anyway, I guess back to some of the other business that is of concern today. You know, when the U.S. and its coalition forces took on Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, those types of things, you know, we didn't do what we did because we're incompetent. ISIS and the Islamic militant rise, those organizations, were meant to be created. I mean, we destabilized governments. No kidding that Saddam Hussein was basically a dictator. But, as I often said in my earlier videos, all we did is replace him or leave a vacuum. And we're doing much more horrible things than he ever did. Same in Libya. And if the powers that be get their way, the same thing will happen to Syria, ultimately Iran, and then Russia. Except, of course, dealing with Russia, we're talking about the very strong possibility of nuclear war. And there are those in power who believe that that's feasible, doable, and that you're expendable in the process of them keeping their power. So I just wanted to bring that up real quick. The tactics that we used in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Libya, the undercover operations in Egypt to try to bring the Muslim Brotherhood, which is all part of the same Islamic network that provides the militants, you know, for Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Khorasan, if Khorasan even exists, other than in the minds of some intelligence officer who wanted to create something so that we'd have an excuse to go into Syria and violate its airspace, violate its country, its sovereignty. But replacing Assad, of course, is not going to do anything better for Syria than replacing Saddam Hussein in Iraq did. It's all about oil and money. I mean, why would Saudi Arabia be so much against these secular countries? And why is it that most of the Al-Qaeda and ISIS people, especially the Al-Qaeda people that supposedly, did the 9/11 thing, came from Saudi Arabia, were financed by them, were in our language schools, our defense language schools, and in our airline programs. It's all so obvious, and yet most people just gloss it over. So, we've developed these tactics, we've tested our weapons systems, and they're slowly showing up arrayed against the American people. Now we have the Ebola thing, and that's where I wanted to go now. I was involved in chemical surety program, and was also involved in nuclear chemical accident incident security. And I know a little bit, of course, about biological too, but I'm not a medical doctor, and things have gone a long way since my day. But I still recognize the situation for what it is. And this entire thing in Africa with Ebola outbreak, especially in Liberia, I don't know if you know the history of Liberia. Of course, the Muslims actually were the ones who were promoting the slave trade back in the Middle Ages, 1600s and earlier. And, of course, had black chiefs fighting against other black chiefs, enslaving the people and selling them to the Muslims, who would then sell them to the European slave traders. And then, of course, the black slaves ended up here. And that's not to say there weren't other slaves. Everybody talks about the black slave problem, but in fact, there were white slaves too, from Ireland and other places. No matter what you call them, that's what they were, slaves. But my point in all this is that this thing in Liberia is interesting, because what we have here is a country. You can go look this up. You can look it up on Google, any place, and you'll find out that Liberia, its very name, came from white people who wanted to basically make up for bringing the blacks from Africa into slavery here. And they created Liberia for these people. It was their country. So the fact that Ebola struck the strongest there, and by the way, Liberia has not done well at all, except for the first few years when it was created. Much like what has happened to South Africa. South Africa has, of course, gone down too in its abilities. It used to be a wonderful place. It isn't anymore. Not blaming the black people, just showing that there has to be a know-how, and there has to be a commitment, and those were probably lacking just to a great extent. But back to Liberia, because of what it stood for, it's interesting that the Ebola outbreak happened the worst there. And looking at the entire thing, I had a friend email me a few days ago, and he said, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I think these are going to be your answers. And he was right. He actually answered the question he asked me before I got a chance to answer it, but he was absolutely correct in what he said. And I'm not going to go through all those. I'm just going to say that, like we tested our weapons in Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya, and of course gave a lot of our more conventional weapons to I'm not even sure. I was just going to call them Al-Qaeda, the people that are now ISIS. We gave them those weapons in Libya. Gave them access to them. They just didn't take them. They were offered them. And, of course, we're seeing them on the battlefields today. But just like we tested some of our weapon systems in those countries, we're testing this biological outbreak in Africa. And it can't be contained, of course. They probably already have a vaccine, obviously. In fact, Ebola was patented, I understand. I haven't really looked into this, I've just heard about it. Ebola was patented, and the vaccine, of course, is too. And it's a serious disease, especially the way that it's been weaponized. And yes, as I said in the last video, I believe that's exactly what we're seeing. So these U.S. military troops have been sent to Africa, principally Liberia, Sierra Leone, those places, supposedly to help fight against Ebola. Well, I don't think it's that at all. First of all, it would be really stupid for the Pentagon to even let the president talk about sending troops into a red zone like that. But I think there's another purpose, and I kind of saw it today. I found out that they're sending National Guard there, engineers, those types of people, supposedly to build, treatment centers. Let me point something out here. When the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan occurred, former Yugoslavia, places like that, who got the contracts for the building? The military didn't do it. Where's Halliburton? Why isn't Halliburton being given contracts to build stuff in Liberia? Do you see where I'm going with this? No, of course not. They're not going to endanger themselves or their people. Something to think about. And I'm not sure that the troops that are being sent there are really there for the reasons that we're saying, but even if they are, all we're going to do is further spread the disease. Supposedly they'll be quarantined when they come back. Right as it stands right now, I don't think anybody really knows what the incubation period is for this disease. It apparently has an ability to mutate. It's been weaponized. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So everything's up in the air at this point. But the fact that Halliburton isn't taking over these contracts, being given contracts to build these things, and we're using military to do it, National Guard, boy, that raises a lot of red flags in my mind. So to finish up here, I can't give you any definitive explanation of Ebola, but I will say this: you need to search the internet for procedures to help you stay healthy. I don't think taking the vaccine is going to be the answer for a lot of reasons, but certainly building up your immune system and trying to withstand the disease that way is a good idea. And so I've provided a link below in the description box to Natural News about some things. I'd like you to read the whole article on the Ebola situation. The head of the CDC, this kind of double speak and double talk and all this stuff happens all the time. 1 minute he's saying, in the same sentence almost, people that are showing symptoms shouldn't ride public transportation because you might transfer the disease, but you can't catch the disease on a bus. Are these people really this stupid? No, I think this is to confuse the public. I don't believe any of this. Anything that happens with this government anymore, the lies, you can keep your doctor, oh no you can't, whatever. It's always two ways, and everybody stays confused, and I think that's deliberate. So you have this guy saying these two opposite things almost in the same sentence, and we're trusting people like this. It's absolutely amazing to me. But I think the information that Natural News gives here in this link is of interest. I'm sure there are a lot of other places you could go to look these things up. But look at the ways to prevent the disease here. Certainly vitamin C and D, lots of sleep, lots of good pure water. Some of the things that he talks about in there are good, inexpensive ways to go about building your immune system and making it resist this if we can. Garlic, etc. So that's all I'm going to do on this video. A lot of things happening, and I want to talk about all of it. I want to point out all of it, but that's impossible. If we don't have our situational awareness, consciousness now, if we don't understand what's happening, I don't think that great amounts of explanation are going to make a difference. So I just thought I'd bring these few things up that I see right now.